The title of this lecture is Hildegard of Bingen, a Medieval Green Movement. If you're a celebrity like I am, you would often get asked, Dr. Hayes, if you could meet one person, living or dead, who would it be? Anybody who knows me knows that the answer would be clear. That person would be Hildegard of Bingen. Probably not somebody that you have ever heard of, but you will hear about her today and learn a little bit, hopefully, too. Hildegard would have been an extraordinary person in any era, but the fact that she was a woman living in the Middle Ages makes her accomplishments all the more extraordinary. We know her through her writings, which include medical texts, scientific texts, letters to important men, and religious poetry. Additionally, she composed religious songs, including a musical, and she was a visual artist. You will see some examples of her visual art in this presentation. Hildegard of Bingen wrote across various fields, composed in various media, and all of that was on top of her day job. She served as the abbess, so that's the nun in charge of a convent, at Disibodenberg Abbey and at Rupertsberg, both in Germany. We know quite a bit about Hildegard's life compared to the lives of other medieval writers, especially medieval women. She was born into a German noble family in 1098. I believe she was the 10th of 10 children, which is why she was given over at age 8 to the care of a religious noblewoman named Jutta, and they had a very close relationship. I should mention that in large families, in this time and place, one of the children would be given over to the church to lead a religious life. So a variation on tithing, where you give 10% of your offering to the church, 10% of your income as an offering to the church. So yeah, no harm would come to these people, but it was just decided, okay, they would lead a religious life to give something back to God. Jutta took Hildegard with her to become a recluse in the Disibodenberg monastery, and a recluse, kind of timely given that we're going through COVID right now. These were original social isolationists, so they would live often by themselves in small cells, not much bigger than a dorm room, attached to the side of a church. But Hildegard did not maintain this lifestyle for the rest of her life, although some people did live in some kind of complete isolation for the rest of their lives. They dedicated themselves to it as a vocation. Sometime between the year 1112 and 1115, when the monastery became a convent, Hildegard took her vows. After Jutta's death in 1136, Hildegard was elected abbess at Disibodenberg, and in 1151, when she was about 53 years old or so, she had established her own religious community at Rupertsberg near Bingen. And what we have here in this image is Hildegard with some of the nuns that she is in charge of. At this time, when she was in her early 50s, she started to write about religious visions that she had been experiencing. The image that I have here is an iconic one of Hildegard, and it exists in many variations, both in her art as well as subsequent artists who are portraying her and doing homage to her. We've got some fire pouring down on her head. Once you understand her mystical theology and the types of subjects she likes to write on, you'll see that this fire isn't meant to burn all her hair off her head, but rather it is a sign of inspiration, not unlike the Holy Spirit that appeared in tongues of fire to the apostles at Pentecost. Hildegard imagines fire as inspiring and transforming, and it is something of a life force This is an image from the frontispiece of one of her famous works of mystical theology, Civias, and this is an image of her talking with her scribe, whose name was Volmer. The word Civias means know the ways, and this was the title of her first work, of which she wrote many over the course of her career on various subjects. She had 3 that were dedicated just to her mystical theology and her visions. But as you'll see, that kind of, hallucinatory imagery comprises a lot of the works that she produces, even her more quote unquote scientific literature. If we take apart the word Civias, we can see that the C part of it means know. If we think of the word science, that would be oriented toward a specific type of knowledge, and then vias, the ways, know the ways. This book describes 26 religious visions, which are accompanied by illustrations. In these, invisible and eternal things are made known through visible and temporal things. They have to be, because we are humans and thus limited. So this is a tension that we'll find in Hildegard's mystical theology, in that she's trying to put into words ideas and concepts that really surpass human understanding. Her visions, as you have seen or as you will see, are very, very trippy, for lack of a better word. It's as if they exceed the limits of human language, because she's trying to describe her relationship with God, something invisible and unknowable and intangible to humans. What we have here, the picture that is here, is very, very pretty. It's choirs of angels, and it is taken from her book Civias. Scholars aren't certain whether Hildegard drew or designed the images that accompany the written texts in manuscripts, but her writing is very visually oriented. There's lots of colors, there's lots of imagery, so it's really not a stretch to think that she herself was also a visual artist. But on the side of her not composing them herself, a lot of times with medieval bookmaking, the different activities were farmed out to different types of artists. So somebody would do the writing, do the calligraphy. The author would be a person separate from that scribe. Other people bound the book together. So illustrators, that would have been an entirely different job. But a lot of people think that Hildegard drew her own images. Here we have a fun image of the fall of humans. So there is Adam getting engulfed by a tree, hence from the story of the fall of man in the Garden of Eden. Her collection of religious songs is known as the Symphonia, and it's widely available. It's available on CDs with a lot of really catchy titles. It seems that like the New Age crowd really likes Hildegard, so it'll often have a title like Voices from the Air, or something that implies her mystical theology that's very imaginative, as well as oriented toward natural imagery. And as I said, this is an image from Civias of the fall of man. Hildegard also invented a private language, which formed the basis of 2 short works, The Unknown Language and The Unknown Alphabet. So what we have here is a 23-character alphabet that Hildegard invented. So it's not known entirely why she invented this alphabet and this writing system. Did she mean to create a universal language? So at the time, Latin in Western Europe would have served that purpose. Other people wonder, is it supposed to be a mystical language that kind of just breaks the rules of everyday, ordinary language, because she's trying to articulate these really powerful, extraordinary ideas that surpass the limits of usual human language? Hildegard died in the year 1179 at the ripe old age of 81. A lot of people in the Middle Ages lived to old age, like despite what you might think. If you could get past being about 20 years old or so, you've had a good shot at living a long life. But I gotta pat Hildegard on the back for especially long life. Uh, she was canonized as a saint relatively recently in May 2012, and in October 2012, she was named a Doctor of the Church, that is the Catholic Church, an honor that has been bestowed upon only 4 female saints. So if you think what the word doctor means, as in the doctors that work here at this university, it means like a highly learned person. Why did it take so long for her to get canonized, if she was going to get canonized? That happens to a lot of saints, that they fall out of fashion for a few centuries. It's really in the 19th century that there's a revival of interest in Hildegard that spreads from Germany, where she was from, elsewhere. The 800th anniversary of her death in 1979 sparked a lot of interest in her music in particular. I'd like to spend a couple of minutes talking about Hildegard's visions, or should I say her vision, her general philosophy that is visually oriented, that inspires all of her work, from her medical and gynecological texts to her full-blown mystical texts. And incidentally, what we have here is a pretty famous work of art associated with Hildegard, known as Man in Sapphire Blue. It is an image of the Trinity, and if you only see one figure there and not 3, your eyes are not deceiving you. The outer circle is God the Father, then the Holy Spirit is the inner circle, that's the fiery light, and then the person standing there, the blue man, that is Christ incarnate as a human being. Hildegard experienced religious visions, as did a remarkable number of other medieval religious women, and I wish we had world and time enough to talk about some of Hildegard's fellow female mystics, but given the amount of medieval literature written, and within that subset, the amount of medieval religious literature written, an extraordinary amount of mystical literature was written by women. Let me just define one of my terms first. What do I mean by medieval? So the period in Western European history from roughly the year 500 to the year 1500. So I'll drill down more into that in a subsequent lecture, because for now, Hildegard is quite enough for one week. So why does it seem that women are having these experiences and writing about them? So those are really 2 different questions. Why are they having them? They are perhaps more receptive to having the experience, if we're going to go along with the old idea that women are more in tune with their emotions than men are. The fact that they wrote about them might stem from the fact that they are in a lower status position, socially speaking. So in an ironic way, they're authorized to write about these experiences. So a male author might be more preoccupied about what people will think, but if you don't have that elevated status to lose, you might be more willing to speak about your experience. And frankly, also, I'm so thrilled that they did, because Hildegard, favorite person, living or dead. This might sound demeaning to women, but we're also living in a time and place where very, very, very few people are literate. So Hildegard is hyper literate. She knows Latin, and then her native German tongue, as well as others, and she invents her own language. But this is a very visually centered culture. There is lots of iconography, stained glass windows, statues, visual representations of the divine and religious themes, because 90% of the population can't read. So being privy to these visions, I would think in this culture, would suggest something of a bump in status, and would have some cultural capital. To describe these visions and this style of literature that I've been speaking of, we use the word mystic. which connotes a perfect experience of the divine. So this is why it is so difficult to write about, because who can really claim to have such an experience? You would need extraordinary language and extraordinary powers of writing. If we were to trace a lineage for women's visionary authority, it would go back to the Gospels, in particular, the story of Mary Magdalene's encounter with Christ that is described in John's Gospel. The Gospel accounts of the resurrection differ, but in John's Gospel, it explains that Mary Magdalene has gone to visit Christ's tomb. He has resurrected, so he's not there, and she's very, 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 very mournful of this fact that she can't do homage to him, and Christ himself is there, mistaken as a gardener. In some medieval images, they have him in full on gardener regalia. Here, not gardener regalia, it's maybe more like the funeral shroud in which he was wrapped. We see the side wound there underneath his raised hand. He's saying to her, "Don't touch me," because he has not yet ascended to heaven. So medieval theologians pondered what this meant about the state of other mortals and the resurrected bodies that they would enjoy according to Christian doctrine. To engage in our discussion of Hildegard, I'd like to introduce 3 key words. The first is cosmos, the second is creation, and the third is paradox. And I think if you apply one of these 3 key words to something you're seeing in Hildegard readings, it might help you navigate them better. So we all know what the cosmos is. There's shows on Netflix about the cosmos. It's a timely and fascinating topic. What I specifically mean is the universe as it implies an integrated and orderly system. So it's the moving parts and how they fit together. That's what we're interested in as we explore Hildegard's writings. Let's compare Hildegard for just a moment to Say Shonigan, whom we studied recently. So Say pays intricate, sensual attention to the details of her small world. Hildegard, there is a picture. Well, it is not of Sei Shonigan. It is of her rival, Murasaki Shikibu, but I am so enchanted by those desks, the writing desks featured in art from the Heian period and the women writing at them. So sorry, Sei Shonigan. Murasaki was not a fan of yours and bad-mouthed your reputation after the fact. But okay, there is a representation of Sei who pays attention to a small world. Hildegard is more interested in relationships between things. So she enjoys thinking about how the very, very, very smallest pieces fit into a big piece, a big picture. And second, she also likes to think about how something that seems like an integrated whole is in fact comprised of several moving parts. So for example, with a human being, yes, there are all the organs in the body, but she breaks human beings down into body and soul and thinks about their relationship, spills a lot of ink thinking about their relationship, and for that, she's not unlike many other medieval theologians. The most famous image associated with Hildegard's mystical theology is the cosmic egg, a survey of the cosmos, which I'll break down in a little bit of detail here, but it is also described in the bit of reading that you were assigned. I would not be the first to point out that, yeah, the egg, although it is not original to Hildegard, is a feminine symbol for the universe. This description of the cosmic egg is drawn from Sevius, and it is one of the bits of reading that you had. We're told that the large form, so the entire thing, represents God. sorry for the messy line there, incomprehensible in his majesty, inconceivable in his mysteries. The egg is pointed here at the top because at first human activity was naive and simple, and then it gets more wide-ranging as we fatten out in the middle. And at the end of the world, coming down here, it will be constricted and squeezed by its many troubles. So we have the sun. I assume it is that because it's in the sky, and that image of the sun with a moon joined together would be a medieval way of drawing the sun. We're told that that symbolizes Christ, the Son of Justice. So a little pun there. 3 lights. That is these guys. So this up here at the top. These 3 lights, as the reading tells us, when God's Son descended from heaven to earth, leaving the angels behind him, he made known by things of the heavens to human beings existing in soul and body. So these are kind of like lights that flare up to signify Christ's descent to earth, his quote unquote humanity. The sandy ball here is in the middle. So Hildegard, in saying it's human beings gifted with contemplation, that would be somebody like her. So her and other members of religious holy orders would have been living the contemplative life, as opposed to people who worked, so to speak, 8 to 5 jobs. They would have been living the active life and pursuing more mundane goals and pleasures. The elements of the world, so all 4 of them are here. These little blue things are the winds. So if you look carefully, I just drew over one of them, so you might not be able to see that one so great, but that is air. We're told that these are fiery balls, and we also have the sun there, so that's fire, as well as this exterior around the circle is kind of fiery. Earth would be in the middle, so that's the sandy ball, and water, as the passage describes, one of these layers in here is an aqueous layer around around one of the circles. So yeah, she really likes to represent all 4 elements when she can in her cosmic visions. Hildegard, in writing about the cosmos, loved to meditate on the fact that there are 4 elements: fire, earth, air, water, and 4 seasons. So we see the 4 seasons depicted here as you go around this circle. So that is a little bit more legible to us than that previous cosmic egg. What we have down here in the corner is Hildegard writing this all down. So quite a few of her images show her there beholding this magnificent phenomenon. You had another reading selection about the cosmos called The Cosmos from a book called Causes and Cures. That book is a cosmological book, so a work of philosophy that ponders the nature of the universe. And of course, given that this is the Middle Ages, this would have been informed by Christianity in Christian countries, so much of Western Europe. It's also a medical text, but I think we can see a lot of similarities between the cosmic egg description and the cosmos as it's described in this more medical, quote unquote, more scientific text. On page 95, we have a couple of descriptions of the cosmos. She meditates on the human being as a cosmos, that is the union of the mortal body and the immortal soul. In general, we find that she is body positive, and that is not true of all medieval authors. Like, some of them say, oh, the body is just an occasion for temptation. The body is just something that you need to shunt off eventually when you die and recuperate when the dead are resurrected. Your body will be glorified then. It's not the same body that you live in on earth exactly. But she sees the body as a vessel for the soul. So she's, ironic and paradoxical in her regard for the body's function. So yes, it is a container for the soul, and yes, it is a sign of our mortality, but nonetheless, it is joined to the soul. So your body, just looking at those two elements, is something of a little cosmos. The second key word that I said we were going to consider was creation. She considers this in many different gears or modes, so to speak. So this here depicted is the 6 days of creation, something that she really liked to meditate on. What we have there is Adam, and down here is a representation of the devil, along with the tree that caused the fall of man. She also, not surprisingly, really liked circles. So we have here in the center, the 6 days is contained within a circle, and then there's one hanging above that scene. To talk about Hildegard's idea of creation, which she likes to meditate on in many different keys, I'd like to start with a text called A Vision of Love. So this image is described on page 171 to 2, and I thought I'd just go through an itemization of what we have going on in this figure. So it is a female figure, so that's the human figure standing there. On top of her head is an old man's head. Then we have eagle wings. On one of these wings, so the one to your left, this wing, there is an eagle's head, and on this side, on our right, there is a human head. She carries a lamb, which I would think signifies Christ as the Lamb of God. Like, surely Hildegard had that in mind. Maybe she had multiple ideas behind these symbols. But also she is just receiving these visions. So this is what the vision told her. Then she is trampling I say here a monster, but it looks like a snake on top of a monster. So although it's not identified as Satan, this snake suggests Satan in the form in which he tempted humans in the Garden of Eden. And then the beast below the snake, that looks like how the devil was represented in medieval art. So the red eyes kind of giving it away for me there. So what does this figure have to say? So she identifies herself as the fiery life of divine substance. And Hildegard's visions, even when she does explain them in detail, they are so multivalent. And by that, I mean they can signify a bunch of different things. So does this female figure signify female reproductivity, or is this woman an emblem for divine creation with a capital C? Both of those things, and probably several more nuances of the word life with a capital L, creation with a capital C. She tells us that she awakens all to life with every wind of the air, as with invisible life that sustains everything. So once again, although we're talking now about creation, like, there is a cosmic unity here in that all living things are joined by this force, which is really wild to think about, because living things all live and exist via different physical mechanisms. But yeah, we do say that a tree is alive, as well as me, a person, as well as my dog. She says, thus I am concealed in things as fiery energy. So once again, fire for Hildegard isn't destructive. It's evidence of divine inspiration, divine creativity, and it's transformative and creative. So perhaps a bit paradoxical there. A key word that we find in the first full paragraph on page 172 is greenness, which is paired with the word fecundity. So fecundity meaning productivity, with the implication of reproductivity, but you might apply it also to, in the Middle Ages, it's kind of a a dated term, that a field was especially fecund, or it's usually applied more to people. Hildegard had a special word for this greenness, viriditas, which we find throughout her writing, most of which was in Latin. There's a present-day English analog for this word, viridity, and that's a 64-cent word if I ever heard one. It means greenness, as it implies the life force. So not just like your friend of mine, Kermit the Frog, who says it's not easy being green. Hildegard would say, oh no, it is wonderful to be green. It is wonderful to embrace the viriditas of all living things and God's creation. It is a very joyful word. Now that you know what viriditas means and even what green means in Hildegard's theology, this hymn that was assigned perhaps makes more sense. So I'll read it here and you can listen to it on YouTube. I'll have the links up on Blackboard. You'll have to listen to it in Latin, but the music is just so pretty. Let's see here how the ideas of creativity, as in, creativity of the life force, God's creation with a capital C, and the cosmos arise. So it says, O noblest green viridity, you're rooted in the sun and in the clear, bright calm. You shine within a wheel no earthly excellence can comprehend. You are surrounded by the embraces of the service, the ministries divine. I would say there that she's speaking about like religious rituals that are able to, contain or respond to this awesomeness of creation with a capital C. As morning's dawn, you blush. As sunny flame, you burn. So there we've got the fire there in that last stanza, the fire that can just toast a bit like a marshmallow or be really explosive like the sun. Here is another hymn that you were assigned. It's very short, so I'll read it in its entirety here as well. First, right off the bat, so interesting that it's about the redness of blood. Somebody's blood in particular, spoiler alert, Christ's blood. But what an interesting premise for a religious meditative hymn. So this is how this one goes. O redness of blood, who have flowed down from that height which divinity touched. So presumably it's Christ's blood pouring as he is dying on the cross. You are the flower that the winter of the serpent's breath never withered. So imagery from the natural world, Christ as a flower that will not ever die from the breath of the evil serpent. But so interesting here that she homes in just on like the redness and the richness and like the visually arresting sight of the blood. I included this hymn here in the brace of texts about creation because Hildegard does often think about Christ's crucifixion as a creative act because it brought eternal life to the faithful in medieval Christian theology. Here is an image of the crucifixion from Hildegard's Sevius. At the top there we have Christ and indeed some red blood flowing from his side wound. People in the Middle Ages were really attracted to the wound that Christ received on his side, according to gospel accounts, from the spear of a Roman soldier named Longinus. Poked him in the side while he was dying on the cross. What we have there next to Christ is, and let me point to her, ecclesia. So the church, a feminized image. She looks a little bit like a statue, and that's because she's personified as a person here, but really is an institution and even a physical place. She is catching the blood from his side. In the Middle Ages, they believed in the real presence, capital R, capital P, of Christ in the Eucharist. And so images of the crucifixion here on top are often joined with images of the Eucharist, shown there at the bottom, and ecclesia on top is catching Christ's blood in a Eucharistic vessel that would have served the wine. I mentioned that because I had talked about the crucifixion on the previous slide, but it's also a way of getting into the paradoxes in Hildegard's mystical theology. So a key one that governs all paradoxes is that you have to die in order to live, and related to that Christ died in order to buy eternal life for all mortals. So I know that we talked about the greenness, but I bring up this example of greenness under the aegis of paradoxes because it applies to the Virgin Mary, who this is an image by Hildegard taken from her manuscripts. We have the Virgin Mary there with a crown on her head. She's the Queen of Heaven, some kind of plant life, a green plant, and some kind of circle, which for Hildegard signifies like the cosmos and sacred unity of all things. Her concept of viriditas, greenness, is often feminized. So we saw earlier that there was a divine agent who represented all of life, and it was in fact a woman who spoke to the way that she inspires all living things. She is described, Hildegard describes this power as an agent of God, a divine vitality that's an animating life force, and this greenness being an expression of the divine on earth. So what does this have to do with the Virgin Mary? Well, the hymn "O Branch of Freshest Green" is a Marian hymn. It is in devotion to the Virgin Mary. In Mary's case, viriditas is epitomized in the virgin birth. So the religious mystery wherein Mary was a virgin, yet was chosen by God to give birth to the Christ child. So Hildegard digs into this religious mystery, which is usually interpreted as advice for chastity. And not that Hildegard goes against that advice or decries that advice, but she likes to think about the mysteriousness and the wonderfulness of Mary's body giving forth life, and she spills a lot of ink meditating on this mystery in that vein. So this is a little bit of a left turn, but I wanted to drive home that idea of the Virgin Mary's body as being productive and reproductive, and how Hildegard in the hymn "O Noblest Green" celebrates her feminine powers of productivity. So as I said, she doesn't focus on Mary's virginity as a call to chastity so much as a condition in which Christ was born. So Hildegard elsewhere in her writing calls Mary the authoress of life, and that is so suggestive. I won't get into that here, but she really loves the Virgin Mary and has lots of different ways of celebrating her. The image that we have here is not from Hildegard. It is one of many, many, many that I could have chosen in the motif of Maria Lactans, which shows the Virgin Mary breastfeeding the Christ child. So yes, at no time in the Middle Ages does Orthodox theology say that Mary was not a virgin when she gave birth to the Christ child, but however, there are motifs that celebrate her, female body as being able to give birth to this human divine child, Christ, God incarnate, that are much less prudish than you might attribute to medieval people initially. In closing, I'd like to think about one final paradox, and that is Christ as the bridegroom. This is spoken to in the hymn called "O Lover Sweet." A common image in medieval devotional literature for and by women is Christ as the bridegroom, Christ as the husband, even Christ as the lover. And indeed, by taking up a religious life or a very spiritual path, one was wedded to Christ in a practical sense, because he's the center of your life. This spiritual marriage is described as being much, much, much better than a regular marriage. Of course, these women, like most of them, have forsaken the prospect of conventional marriage. So to be cynical, I might say that it's, offered as a substitute, but, a much, much better one. You don't have to tend to children who wake you up because they're screaming and crying. You don't have to take care of a mortal husband who gets sick and old. This is a much better relationship. And along with this theology, or this, should I say, this idea, even though you're married, it's imagined that you retain your virginity. And, within this scheme, virgins are superior to married women. Some of the imagery can get pretty erotic, so not so much in Hildegard's writing. Like here we do have a mortal woman hugging Christ himself, and that is not uncommon to see. It doesn't get graphic, but sometimes it is imagined that like Christ will hug a person, or give them a kiss on the mouth, or you be there physically to comfort them. So yeah, not surprisingly, it does seem, irreverent if one does not completely understand what this image is about. If we take it as a metaphor for the mystical union between a human and God, then it does make sense. And so, why express it in this way? Well, all of this mystical theology would contend that human beings are limited, our language is limited, our brain power is limited, and so we need imagery to address divine ideals and profound spiritual concepts. So that's it for this week. I hope you enjoy Hildegard of Bingen, and if you do ever get to meet her, well, I'll be insanely jealous.